giant footprints.
This little cluster here.
Clover, what happened over here?
Good morning. Welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. I've got a planting vlog for you today, as well as a story about a few cows. I had to get the bread out of the oven. I actually let it overproof a little bit this morning, so it's a little bit fluffier than normal. It's gonna be delicious still. I actually did our first cream separating of the season, of the milking season, a few days ago, but I have not gotten a chance to whip that cream into butter yet, so still got our store-bought butter that I'm very grateful for. I really like a soft crust on my sandwich loaf, and it was actually a viewer that told me I could put butter on the bread as soon as it comes out of the oven, and that will help soften the crust even more. So I've been doing that ever since. It's a good tip. I did make a Parmesan style cheese out of the skim milk when I cream separated the other day, and it's been sitting out here drying out. It does have a few cracks on the outside, but I don't know. We don't get to taste this for 7 months, so I have no idea how it's gonna turn out. But we don't have our pigs anymore this year. We alternate pigs one year, and then the pig area will be a garden, so spoiler alert. We do feed some of our skim milk to the chickens, but there's a lot of it, and so it's kind of nice to be able to do something like this with it. We have done yogurts and different types of cheeses and things with the skim, and we just prefer the full fat versions of those things, so hopefully this works out well. This is what we're dealing with today. I've picked out some seeds, and I've got something really fun in this box. Oh yeah, and my long Langstroth beehives are complete. They just need a little bit of stain and sealing before we can put our bees in them. See a little bit of germination of our Yodfaw broccoli. There's some right there too. Some of your little babies popping up. We are going to be getting some rain later, and then a pretty decent amount of rain in the forecast for the next few weeks with relatively warm temperatures. That's good news for the garden, kind of bad news for the goats. Just worms and coccidia and all that, but it's good for the garden. I am seeing several different peas germinating in the beds. These are really going to start popping up in the next day or so. But like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we had some visitors. So our neighbors keep Black Angus cattle, and we love them. We love our neighbors, we love the cows. They're right there. They are right next to our property. And just about every year they get out for one reason or another. It happens. You have livestock, things happen, they get out. I'm not upset about it. But usually when they get out, they come to my garden. This year was no different. I don't have a ton in the garden right now. Usually their favorite thing to mess with is the blueberries. Thankfully, they left the blueberries alone though. It doesn't look like they took a nibble of any of these. They did do a little bit of traipsing over here. This here is our asparagus and a bed that we have some wine cap mushrooms in. You can see a little bit of mycelium right there. It's a little bit disturbed, so hopefully they're gonna be all right. I'm not super worried about really any of this. All of these perennial things, I'm sure they don't prefer to be bounded upon by a bovine, but it's not gonna hurt them. There's quite a few asparagus crowns in here, and I'm sure the cows really didn't do any kind of damage. And same thing for the strawberries. Obviously it's not super ideal to have giant footprints in the strawberry bed, but it's not like they can't come back from it. See, these strawberries are fine, these strawberries are fine, even those guys are fine. Just gotta even it out a little bit. And it'll be like nothing ever happened. See, it looked like they ran across here, and they did run across here as well. I have come back through and kind of fixed the soil a little bit in these beds. There really wasn't anything in these beds for them to damage, not really. I do have muscadine grapes that are up against the T-post, but I think because, you know, they're snugged up close to that barrier for the cows, they didn't trample them, which is awesome. But I do have something that I want to put in these beds before the rain. So we are trying to establish this particular garden space as a perennial garden space. And one of the things that I've been meaning to put in the garden for a couple years that I have not until this year are walking onions. So this is a little cluster of walking onions. I purchased 2 different like stages for the onions, or for the bulbs. So I showed you this little cluster here. This actually comes from the top of the plant, and this is the bulb that goes in the ground. You can see we've got a little bit of growth here. These look a lot like shallots to me, and they will get a little bit bigger when they're in the ground. But what they do is they grow and form almost a scape. It's like a stalk with not a flower on the end, but this develops on the end. And you can see these little bulbs. As that stalk kind of dies back and these bulbs start to get heavy, this cluster slowly makes its way down into the soil, and then these will root and become more onions. So they kind of walk along your garden in a sense in their pattern of growth. And by that pattern of growth, they sort of act like a perennial. They're just constantly there because they're constantly essentially reseeding themselves. From what I understand, we could pull these clusters apart and plant each individual little bulb in the ground if we wanted to. I may do that with some of them, but because I have like the original bulbs here anyways, I think I'm just gonna put the entire thing down in the ground. And I'm not entirely sure about spacing. I'm just gonna put them about 6 inches apart, which is what I would do with regular onions, or like your standard onion, I guess. And that's about the spacing that I use for garlic as well. So you see the green? The green's gonna be coming up out of the soil, and these little things that look like roots, these are roots from last year. They will develop new roots, but this is the orientation that they're gonna be going in the ground. And with the clusters, it's essentially the same thing. The pointy part should be pointed up towards the sky, and down here is where all the roots will come out. See, this one's already started to put on a few little greens. They're ready. All this stuff that I've got down in the bed, this is just the leftover stems and stalks and vines from what I grew on the trellis last year. I had tomatoes here, and I did have some beans, and this is essentially a mulch, and it's working to help protect the soil underneath from the sun and the wind. When it comes time to harvest these, a lot of people will just use them essentially as green onions, but you can harvest the little bulbs in the ground. And in theory, what you do is you'll harvest the bulb when they have already put on some of these clusters on the stalk. So when you harvest the bulb, you throw this in the planting hole, and in that way you can help encourage them in reseeding themselves. There we go. That task is done.
Look how big that hoof is. Clover, what happened over here? Huh? You see all those hoof prints? That's not from you. Did you guys see him come through?
According to the hoof prints, it does not look like they made it back here to the greenhouse, which is good because they could have done a lot of damage in here.
Check this out. We have a lot of germination in the tomato tray as of right now. We've got some that look like they've really just come up in the last few hours. This is encouraging to see.
I had been pretty worried because of the temperature that my little mini greenhouse inside this greenhouse, my little seedling greenhouse, it got to be well over 100 degrees, and seeds are pretty resilient, but that's pushing it. That's really pushing it. So I did worry that we would have some suffering of these seeds, but no, we've got germination just about every pot, and I think the ones that don't have germination in them right now, they are probably hours from poking up above the soil.
So what you see me doing right now might be breaking some hearts, but I did heavily sow the seeds in these pots just to ensure that we would get some germination in each. And the company that I got these from, Sow Right Seeds, with the tomatoes, they average about 45 seeds per packet. So I did have extra seeds in order to be able to sow nice and heavily to ensure we got some germination. There's a lot of germination, so I am thinning them out a little. Some of the pots I did sprinkle seed on, intending for them to be heavily like packed in there, and later on when they get a little bit bigger, I'll actually separate these out and put them in my green stock over there. This is my brand new green stock that we filled not too long ago. I have been watering it daily just to make sure everything stays good and moist, but right now there's nothing in it. We're waiting on some of those tomatoes to get a little bit bigger. But I was realizing that while this is here and while I'm waiting for things like those tomatoes to be big enough to transplant, there are things that I can grow in here in the interim that I can grow and then subsequently harvest, because they have such a quick turnaround. So we're gonna be putting some stuff in here today. These green stalks come in different sizes. You can buy, I think, maybe even as small as a 3-tier up to a 7-tier. And the 7-tier is what we have here. And there's 6 planting pockets per tier. So we have a total of 42 places to put some plants, and that's really exciting. So I had asked you guys what you thought I should plant, and I got some really good suggestions. We're gonna be putting some of your suggestions in here today. Some of you suggested a smaller size zinnia. I had saved these seed from last year. I had some of this zinnia volunteer in my raised bed garden. This is the Peruviana zinnia, and they're really small and really cute. They're gonna work well in here, so I'm gonna fill one of these tiers. Probably the top tier. Top tier should probably be flowers, right? Like a beautiful crown. Sounds good to me. Some of you suggested that I put in some celery into the green stock. That is a very good idea. I've got 2 different types. One of them is a little bit bigger, this standard size right here, and then I have this little one. I have tried to grow celery in the past, and I wasn't aware that too cold of a temperature can actually cause celery to bolt. They are frost hardy, but I guess they have their limits with that as far as bolting goes. So we're gonna put some of these in here. I think they may need, it says to surface sow. I wondered if they needed light to germinate. Gently press them into the soil. Okay. I think I'm gonna rough up the top of these cups just a little. I think I'm gonna put the pink ones in this tier. And then, like the packet said, I'm gonna press them down into the soil. So I did rough it up a little, so there's a little bit of spot for them to settle down in, and then we'll press them in. We'll do the other variety of celery on the tier just below that. Now these particular things, these zinnias and these celeries, these are not the fast turnaround plants that I was talking about. These will be getting going probably by the time I put the tomatoes in here, but the tomatoes can go in the tiers where we harvest the other things out of. Just put a pinch of seed in each pocket. I will need to thin these out. That's okay. I like to ensure germination where I can. I have this orange hat tomato variety that I have grown indoors before, and this is a dwarf style tomato. I'd like to put these out here, and obviously I'm not putting these in starter pots, starting them directly in the green stock, which you can absolutely do. I don't have as many of these, so I think I am only going to put 1 per pocket, and whatever doesn't germinate, we'll put something else in later. So on these bottom 3 tiers, this is where I'm going to be putting in some of the things that are going to have a quick turnaround. So I'm going to start out with this Purple Lady Bok Choy. I have heard of people planting this, and these guys essentially being a bug or pest magnet. We're going to take our chances. Here in the greenhouse, we have fewer pests. I don't really know what it is. Maybe the greenhouse itself acts like some kind of cover. But these are a very fast harvest. The back of the seed packet doesn't say, but from what I recall, it's usually about 45-ish days from seed. Whoops! That's how volunteers happen. And on the bottom tiers, we're going to be putting in a couple different varieties of radish. My kids really like radishes, and I like radishes too. You can eat the bulbs as well as the greens. Usually radishes take about 28 to 35, give or take, days from seed to harvest. So this is a quick turnaround. I think I'll aim for
like 3 radishes per pocket. Get you out of the sun or we're gonna have problems. I don't know if you can hear the fan going in the greenhouse. It is not noon here yet today, but our high is close to 80 and it's already over 80 degrees in the greenhouse. It's pretty hot. Second from the bottom tier in the Pink Beauty. Yeah, Pink Beauty radish. And then down here, we will do Giant of Sicily. This one says, a Sicilian heirloom, large 2-inch round summer radishes are bright red with a great taste and good quality. Pure Italian seed. So because these ones are a little bit bigger, I think I might just do, I might do one per pocket here. Could possibly get away with 2. Yeah, let's try 2. When you sow seeds in a green stalk, it does not hurt to water from the outside as well as the inside. Some of those seeds are really tiny, and it does depend a little bit on your soil composition. Some soils will wick moisture towards the seeds or towards the edge of the container a lot more effectively than others. So just to ensure that the planting area is getting sufficiently moist, I've been watering the cups too. 84.6 in the greenhouse. Warm. Down here are some peppers that I planted. I don't see any germination yet. Peppers do take a little bit longer than something like tomatoes to germinate. There's also eggplant in here as well, but nothing yet. The lettuces have a lot more going on, and then here are the kales.
Hi.
Are you guys ready to go to the feed store?
What?
We gotta go get food for the critters.
What?
Did you guys see all the cow prints everywhere?
Yeah, and poopy.
And poops. Isn't that funny?
My camera actually died in the heat earlier. 'Tis the season, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of closure on the bread and how that turned out. It's a little bit extra soft just from overproofing, but it slices up really nice. So I'm getting fluffernutter sandwiches ready for lunch for the kids. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm excited that we got so much planted. It won't be very long before everything is up and flourishing. Believe it or not, I still have more things to plant. I still have some more seeds that I have placed orders for, but our estimated last frost is still a month away, which seems so crazy with how warm it's been. But it's a fact, we will have at least one more freeze, so we're trying to rein it in a little bit. I'm getting excited though.